17 aniversario y también expresar mi agradecimiento a los redactores.
I also want to express my gratitude to all of the people who have been written the paragraph to express our worries,
y que la identificación de los problemas
and that they also express the identification of problems,
y la mención del héroe nacional de San Vicente de las Granadinas,
and that they also mention the national hero of San Vicente and the Grenadines
en el panteón de los héroes reconocidos por el ALBA-TCP.
in the mausoleum dedicated to the heroes recognized by ALBA.
Por mencionar el gran papel
I also want to thank you, the people who wrote the draft
en el Consejo de Seguridad al defender los
and that they also defend the interest in front of the Security Council of the United Nations from the
y por la seguridad de todos los pueblos
Caribbean people, and also the security and the safety of all peoples,
y defensa de la Carta de las Naciones Unidas.
and also the defense of the chapter of the United Nations.
Sobremanera,
I'm very
el
pleased
párrafo
to see that there is a paragraph
la cuestión esencial de la
where
reparación
they approach the essential issue of reparation,
o el genocidio de la
reparation to genocide caused by slavery
nuestro
in our region of the Caribbean region,
y que la identificación de
and
nuestras
also the
luchas
identification in the draft of the struggle of the San Vicente and the Grenadines,
consecuentes respecto a una serie de opciones caribeñas en abril de este año.
and that they also mentioned some of the options of the Caribbean regions in this April this year. I also want to thank you all the members of ALBA-TCP
Por el aporte
for
y
the
el
contributions
apoyo importantes y el esfuerzo humanitario
and the humanitarian effort they have done
de nuestro país tras el
trying to help us recovering from
el documento
the
ante nosotros
problems we have. The document in front of us,
o sea, el plan de trabajo
the
post-pandemia
work
para los
planned post-pandemic for the year, during the year 2020,
tras la
the
pandemia,
contingency plan
es correcto,
to face
y
the
deseo
pandemic.
recalcar los 6 pilares
I
identificados
also want to enhance the pillars enhanced in this draft,
respecto de la promoción
referring to
de
the
la
promotion
preservación de
of
salud,
the healthcare,
promoción de la seguridad alimentaria y la
the safety of
renovación de ALBA Alimentos,
self, to become self-sufficient in food,
del transporte entre las islas,
the strengthening
la garantía
the ways to communicate among the islands of the regions, the promotion also of ALBA
como ante las organizaciones supranacionales y suprarregionales,
in front
la
of the regional
promoción de
organizations,
estrategia para el desarrollo económico
of the
a
strategy
través
of
de la
the economic
coordinación
development through the cooperation,
del Consejo de Complementación Económico del ALBA.
also
Si
through
nosotros
one of the
llevamos a la
councils of ALBA.
práctica muy asiduamente este plan de contingencia
Usually
económica
this
para
contingency
la pandemia,
plan,
consecuentemente estaremos en muy buenas condiciones o mucho
if we
mejores
follow
que
this
las que
plan, we
tenemos.
should overcome a lot of the situation.
Por lo tanto,
That's why
no entraré en los detalles de estos documentos
I won't go into deep
que ya están claras
details of this document
y que han sido leídos. En una organización
because they have
como
been
la
already
ALBA-TCP,
read. In one occasion, during a meeting of
siempre he
ALBA-TCP,
considerado o confirmado
I have always considered and confirmed during my participations in these meetings
nunca antes de nuestro trabajo aquí
that our work
en
here
ALBA-TCP
in ALBA-TCP
gira alrededor de dos aspectos principales.
is addressed to two main points. First, the right to keep our memory, our historical memory, to remember who we are, to remember our struggles, the historic struggles we have had, and what is happening right now in this modern time, and to have the right to keep the memory of the historic memory, and it will be the history, the memory of our history written by ourselves, and to remember who we are, and do not allow others to define our history, not to allow anybody else to define the identification, the identity of our region, of our Caribbean region. This is essential for an organization like this. On the second hand, we need to use that historic memory to analyze the contemporary conditions, to work jointly and in cooperation and solidarity so that we have a better future. And in all time, we need to think that the future is ours. We cannot live in the past, but we have to remember it. However, we need to remember it to understand where we are now, to take into account also what are our aspirations for the future, to work together and not to miss this opportunity. These are very simple proposals that every civilized person should take into account. We are here today in a global economy that is very complex. COVID-19 pandemic has stopped the economy and we have been facing also different natural disasters, and also we have to face imperialism and other contradictions. We have the challenges of our sovereignty and at the same time the right to follow our own path, our own way, according to our own wish and identity. And due to comprehension and challenges that we are facing today, that is very important that we find a way to see if we can dedicate in a better way to work in a country that is always among us, a country that has a history, that has a history that is trying also at the same time to weaken ourselves, but we cannot allow it to do that. But at the same time, we need to understand why are they doing that. And to understand that, we also have to take into account that they have their own imperialist interests. And in that sense, I am talking about the relations we have to maintain somehow with the United States government. It's a very powerful country
de 340 millones de habitantes, el país más poderoso de la
It's a
Tierra.
country with 340 million inhabitants. It's one of the strongest countries in the world, and also economically.
En los últimos decenios,
During the last during the last 10 years,
ahora se dedica a una guerra contra Venezuela
or more, they have been addressing their
contra Nicaragua.
jobs, the actions against Venezuela, against Nicaragua,
Contra las fuerzas progresistas que se alinean en Bolivia.
and against the progressive actions or movements that have been rising in Bolivia. And as I said before, this is a very complex country, the US. That's why we need to find common ground with them, like when we talk with Obama, to revert what's happening. So we have to find ways to see how we can relate, even if it is hard to relate with them. But we have to find a way to also relate with the US people. I will start saying that recently I welcomed a delegation from our friends from the US. The debate was especially on Nicaragua. And I pushed a question. From all the problems that we are facing in this hemisphere and in the world, why do you want to talk about Nicaragua if there are so many problems? It's a very simple question. That was after the beginning of the debate. And I told one of the people, can you please tell me if Nicaragua produces nails, how many factories produce nails? And the person said, what do you mean by nails? I said N-A-A-L. It's an object. It's an object that you beat with a hammer. And the person said, why are you asking me that? Because Nicaragua. I doubt that Nicaragua has many factories producing nails. Why are you so worried about a country like this? Why are you so obsessed? And I said, we have to leave one side our ideological problems and our variety to define the system we have. At some point, they put mines in Managua against the Contra. For me, this is very hard. Of course, they wanted to know why some Centennial Grenadines are still defending Nicaragua on the side of Nicaragua. So from my states were under the principles. Among the things I said, I also talked about the history. And he said, I mentioned this Garifuna person, and he said, no, I don't know what's happening. I don't know that person. Because in 1975, after the defeat of the colonialism from Britain and the liberation struggle, when there was genocide against
más de 5.000 murieron en 1795 en lo que es hoy la isla de San Vicente y las Granadinas.
And more than 500,000 people died in that rebellion back in history in San Vicente and the Grenadines. And then they went to Belize and Honduras and Guatemala and then Nicaragua.
¿Qué tiene eso que ver con lo que sucede hoy día?
What does that part of the history has to do with what's happening today? And he said, why are you obsessed with Nicaragua? I cannot understand. It is the regime of the Sandinists. Since 1979, and the system led by Daniel Ortega today, they have always been defending the rights of the people more than any other government because they help the people. We have a tie. We have a tie with the history. We also have a tie related to them from previous history. And Nicaragua sees our country like something that has a spiritual tie too. That's why my friend from the US said, that happened a lot of time ago. And I said, yes, but I think for me it's part of the modern times also, because we are related. Because today, Daniel Ortega from today is a different person from Daniel Ortega from 1979. So we will see what is the position of the people when we have the coming elections. And I said today, now, congratulations, my brother, you had a very good elections. And I said, but you do not only want to talk about the history before the 19th century, we want to talk also about the history of today. Manuel Zelaya, who was democratically elected president in Honduras. And then the U.S. government, particularly Clinton, from the Democratic Party, who was also on the side of the right wing. So they were victims of a coup d'etat against the Constitution. I said Zelaya was the first president in Honduras to recognize the community of the indigenous community, and he did it also with all the other communities from the indigenous communities. And he also used one of the words from this community in Spanish, and it is related to, it's a leader from a nation. That is a recognition of the national hero of Honduras, also declared as a national hero in San Vicente and the Grenadines. After 12 years, so that the progressive movement have been able to come back to the leadership in Honduras through elections on the person of Xiomara Castro, the actual wife of Manuel Zelaya. That is what happening. That's what is happening in contemporary times. So I told them, so what is your preoccupation? Why are you worried about what's happening in Nicaragua? How is that possible? It is a part of the establishment of the U.S. government. They had discussions with the organization from the Latin American countries to analyze, to organize a coup d'etat, and they tried to do it through a delegation that was participating as an observer in the elections, during the elections against Evo Morales. There were strikes, there were protests due to different reasons, but it was caused by a delegation that was participating in the elections as international observers. And that was the time. This was the time in which the people had the right to put the progressive movement back into power. And with the current government of Bolivia, the president who spoke before me, I have always open to discussion in respect to democracy. But I approach all these questions, I approach democracy in the way Mateus do it in the Bible. There is a parable that is, you can read it in the Bible, and it reads, if you look for me, if you judge me, you will also be judged in the same way. And if you want to take my life, if you want to see the Virgin in my life, you also have to see the Virgin in your life. It's a very simple proposal. Everybody in this room, you are wedded to the practice of democracy. And democracy will always is an incomplete activity. It is always an incomplete state of the mind, because it could always be better in accordance to the history of ourselves, in accordance to the conditions of the moment. Right now I'm reading a book. It is called 1619. It is related to the first time that the African people who were brought in a slave condition to Virginia for the first time, according to the book, in the 19th century. In the 400th anniversary, I was asked to visit the Virginia University to give a talk, to deliver a talk. The slavery of the African people since the 17th century. And then in the year 1776, there was a promise of equality through the liberation, but they did not have it into account to the African people who were in a slave condition. That was a contradiction. That was very complex. That is very complex in the democracy of the United States. Even though democracy in the U.S. had some noble features that we can also follow them on the other side. I mean, we can follow all the noble features they have in scientific development, but if we are going to have a debate, and we have to recognize that there is something in that democracy that is called the socialist democracy, that, for instance, in Cuba, that is not perfect either. So we have to find a way that this debate to be developed in a way that there is not only one democracy. There is not only one agenda. There has to be a debate about the human beings, people of flesh and bones, in the specific context where they live, where they have the opportunity to express themselves and to feel represented by their governments, the one they chose, the one they elected. Because everybody has a different experience, and everybody lives different historic conditions. So the issue of race and ethnicity those have been issues in terms of democracy. I don't know in countries like yours, but in that sense we have to be honest when we express ourselves about what is the best way to guarantee that the individual expression within the context of a social context. Because if I behave like an individual and you only see the person, the individual, you won't find the answer. You will not understand my choice. Then it wouldn't be a social issue. It would be the individual position. For instance, in case of the jobs against the virus, well, I don't want to receive the job. It's my body. I do not want to receive that job. And then you have to analyze, is his decision, her decision. I am surprised that there is some manifestation that have said, well, this is my religious freedom and I do not want anything to be shot in my body. And you can think that, but you are not alone in the society. And then I invite you to look in the Lucas book where there is a quote about where it reads, love yourself, love the others as you love yourself. It doesn't read, just love yourself. You have to love the other, you have to love your neighbor. And also, if you love yourself, how could you love the other if you don't want to protect yourself so that the other person doesn't get the virus? Is that the way we have to prevent disease? This is not a general way, but it's an objective fact. And in the Cuban society, we have a different approach. And in our country, in our country we have Sputnik, we have Pfizer, and we are waiting for the Cuban vaccine. And why are we waiting for the Cuban vaccine? Why? Because if there are others that are available, well, we trust the Cuban vaccine. That's why we're waiting. Well, there is not a real explanation to say that we trust in the Cuban vaccine, and in that sense, thanks to God, thanks to Cuba, that you trust in the Cuban vaccine and that you have you trust more and more and more in that vaccine. It's incredible, this vaccine. In your countries, in Barbados, you can tell a similar story that we do trust in the Cuban vaccine. It seems that your vaccine doesn't have chips, doesn't have to do anything with Bill Gates, nothing to do with the conspiracy among the elite in the world. So that's why we trust in the Cuban vaccine. That's why I said God and Cuba are going to save us. Therefore, I want to say, we can say more, but in this moment, of how to relate or not to relate to the U.S. I have many friends from the U.S. You can ask me. What is the policy? How is the policy of your country towards the policy in the south of Florida in the U.S. because of the Cubans that live there, the politicians that are there? They have a lot of votes after New York and Texas. And we do know how they start the process of the election. When do you think that when Obama reached presidency, that the policy towards Cuba was not foolish? But he didn't do anything because he wanted a second term in the administration and he wanted to win Florida's votes. So he has to wait almost till the end. Do you think that Biden, that was part of the administration staff of Obama, that the policy, external policy towards Cuba was foolish, but maybe when Biden reaches the end of his mandate, he could understand that due to the fact that he won't reach a second term. Maybe he does, but I don't think so. He has been there for many, many years as a prime minister of the country, so no, myself, I have seen many things as a prime minister, and I can reach also my own conclusions. We cannot allow that the south of Florida determine the policy of the U.S. So that's why probably we have to wait to the fourth year of Biden's term to see what are they going to do in relation to Cuba. And there is also the problem of Venezuela. When you sanction Venezuela, you also sanction St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dominica, Antigua, because due to the petrol agreement of Petrocaribe gave us resources, and now that one is over. There is not a system of payment available to the chips or to do that kind of transfers. The sanctions have caused that all of this stopped. I'll go to Venezuela, I'll go to Cuba, I'll come to Cuba from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I left the parliament to be here. I could not fly in a Venezuelan aircraft from San Vincent and the Grenadines, because they have to pass through the Puerto Rican territory that belongs to the U.S. I think I felt like Columbus from the 21st century. Columbus has to go to east because he wants to go to west, so I have to go to Venezuela before coming here. So 3 a.m. I was awake. I am impressed myself that I'm still talking. It's completely stupid. And at the same time, the U.S. government, the U.S. is a country that is an investor of the International Bank, and so we cannot receive loans from that International Bank because it's related to the U.S. Antigua and Barbuda, because its domestic gross product is high. In the United States, in the United States, there are more citizens from my country living there than in my own capital. We have 7% of our domestic gross product that comes from the remittances from the people who live in the U.S. And you can see that in the draft that was written, in all the paragraphs. So now, to be progressive and anti-imperialist, to be on the left wing, so to be like this, we don't have to see the U.S. in only one way. We have to see the U.S. in a different, complex way it is. We have to find ways then to relate. For instance, in Cuba, they do not have that opportunity because they cut the bonds, the ties. That's why we have to see the way to create bridges in this complex world where we live, because I'm sure we have to find different ways to create bridges. Before I bridge, I have been talking a lot. But I think somebody spoke more than me, so that's why I don't feel bad about it. I say this. There is a distinguished leader from my country, Saint James Mitchell, and he is a servant of the people. He does have different approaches in relation to mine. Sometimes we love our people in all senses, though we have different opinions. And he has declared as in the Peloponneso War, after the leader who died, and then the leader died, and they were burying it on a Saturday. Everybody was very firm. And somebody said, can I say something good about this person who died? I have to say that he died well. If you don't have anything good to say, just keep in silence. There are a lot of contradictions, but we have done a lot of efforts in our country. St. James have done a lot of good propositions, even though we are in different sides. in our country, we will appreciate that apart from all the condolences that we have received from Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela, that ALBA-TCP, in a document, not specifically a declaration, to express condolences to the family, the friends, and the people of Saint Vicente and the Grenadines due to the decease of Saint this Sir who recently passed. Thank you very much.